Welcome to my channel. Today, we are covering one of the most controversial debates in modern history, the question of Palestinian statehood. In a major development at United Nations today, Britain, Australia, Canada, and France have announced their decision to recognize the state of Palestine. This adds their voices to more than 140 countries worldwide who have already taken that step. But the United States and several of its closest allies still refuse. Why? What does this mean for Israel, for the Palestinians, and for the future of Jerusalem, one of the most contested cities on earth? We will look at the politics, history, the religious claims, and the human suffering behind the headlines. Let's begin. The UN debate at the United Nations delegates debated Palestinian statehood once again. This is not the first time Palestinian leaders have been pushing for full recognition. Since the 1980s, what changed now is that four major Western countries, Britain, Australia, Canada, and France, have broken ranks with the United States. Their governments argue that the peace process has stalled for decades. They say Palestinians deserve international recognition and that peace talks cannot move forward without treating both sides as equals. Israel strongly opposed the decision by these leaders, argued that recognition rewards violence and undermines direct negotiations. And the United States stood firmly with the Israel, insisting that recognition can only come after both sides reach a peace agreement. So the world is now divided. Most nations recognize Palestine, but the most powerful ally of Israel, the United States, does not. Jerusalem and its biblical importance. Let's look into what is happening with the biblical standpoint to understand why it matters so deeply to look at Jerusalem. For Jews, Jerusalem is the eternal capital. It is where the King David established the throne and where his son King Solomon built the first temple believed to house the Ark of the Covenant. For Christians, Jerusalem is the place where Jesus was crucified and resurrected. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre is one of the most sacred sites in Christianity. For Muslims, Jerusalem is the home of Al Aqsa Mosque and the third holiest site in Islam. The mosque was built in the 7th century, long after the time of Solomon, but it sits on the same plateau that Jews call the Temple Mount, where the first and the second temples once stood. There is also a common misconception. Some people confuse King Solomon with Sulaiman. They are not the same. Solomon was a biblical king of Israel around 3000 years ago. Sulaiman, also known as Sulaiman the Magnificent, was an Ottoman ruler in the 1500s who built Jerusalem's walls. So, one small area of land, less than a square mile, carries thousands of years of religious and historical claims, making compromise nearly impossible. Jerusalem is just the heart of larger issue. The land itself, in Judaism, God promised the land of Israel to Abraham and his descendants. For many Jews, this is not just history, it's a divine destiny. In Islam, the land is considered a trust from Allah for the Muslim community. It was ruled by Islamic emperors for centuries, from the early caliphs to the Ottomans. For Christians, the land is central to prophecy, the birthplace of Jesus, and the stage of events foretold in the book of Revelation. When so many faiths see the same land as theirs, conflict is almost inevitable. This is why peace efforts often collapse, not just because politics, but because of beliefs deeply rooted in identity and scripture. One of the most painful realities of this conflict is the cycle of violence. From Israel's perspective, groups like Hamas have built underground tunnels, launched rockets into Israeli territory, and used civilians as shields against Israel. Israel sees this as a proof that Palestinian leadership prioritizes violence over peace. From the Palestinian perspective, they see themselves as a people living under occupation, facing checkpoints, restrictions, demolished homes, and displacement. They argue that their resistance, whether peaceful or protest of armed struggle, is a reaction to decades of oppression. Children in Gaza and West Bank often grow up surrounded by fear, anger, and propaganda. Some are taught that Jews are enemies. Meanwhile, Israeli children grow up with sirens warning them to run to the bomb shelters. Both sides use the language of victimhood. Jews point to centuries of persecution, pogroms, and the Holocaust. Palestinians point to decades of displacement, refugee camps, and military occupation. The truth is, extremists on both sides fuel hatred, while ordinary civilians, mothers, fathers, children suffer the most. So, why not America? Recognize Palestine when its allies like Britain and France now do. First, politics. The United has a powerful pro Israel lobby. Supporting Israel is one of the few bipartisan thing that happens in Washington. Second, security. US leaders worry that recognizing Palestine without a peace agreement would empower militant groups, weakening Israel's defenses. Third strategy, America sees itself as Israel's protector in Middle East. Billions of dollars military aid and defense technology flow to Israel each year. Finally, principle. The US argues that peace cannot be imposed from outside. It has to come from direct negotiation between the Israelis and the Palestinians. Until that happens, recognition in Washington's eyes is premature. Who are the villains? In this story, people always ask who are the terrorists? Who is to blame? The reality is far more complex. There are militant groups in Gaza that openly call for Israel's destruction. There are extremist settlers in the West Bank who attack Palestinian communities. There are politicians on both sides who exploit fear to gain power. But labeling an entire people, whether Palestinians or Israelis, as terrorists or villains only fuels more hatred. The real villains are extremism, violence, and the refusal to see the humanity of the other. The recognition of Palestine by Britain, Australia, Canada, and France marks a turning point. It could increase momentum for Palestinian independence or deepen the divide. Jerusalem remains the center of the struggle, a city of faith and prophecy, but also of endless conflict. The United States continues to stand by Israel while much of the world pushes for Palestinian statehood. The question is, will recognition bring peace or will it trigger more violence? At the end of the day, Christians are the ones who pay the price. Why do you think so? Should Palestinian be recognized as a state right now, or should peace talks come first? Share your thoughts and comments, and don't forget to subscribe my channel for more world events. Thank you.